with us today is Bruce Mandel, who is the chairman of the board at Hartford Athletic, also owner and founder of DataMail, and Dr. Brett Wasserlauf of Advanced Orthopedics of New England. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Connecticut has a great sports narrative, and we've talked a little bit about it in the past, where it feels like, we've been the firsts of a few things, right? And created the rules of football back in 1880, and the Frisbee and ESPN and Starter and WWE. We sort of have some of these early launches, but then we haven't necessarily carried it through to kind of continue. So I think it's refreshing to see representation from Hartford Athletic, from some of these other businesses that are part of the thriving sports, kind of community, and really hopefully let's, put it on a pedestal and then bring folks together. Doctor, you have you have practice, but also a relationship with the teams. And, from that standpoint, what do you envision as kind of some of the key kind of questions that are going to come up when it's sports and medicine and treatment, and there's what are the hot topics you think are going to be most discussed or most brought up?
Good question. First, just thank you for putting this on, and Bruce was just talking about bringing different, not only business partners but different entities together, and here just to be next to Bruce, talking about what he's brought to the state with the Hartford Athletic, and talking about the reverberations throughout the community, for the partners, the healthcare system in this case, that I'm a part of, we're teaching residents, fellows, students based on the platform of taking care of elite level athletes. And that happens because we bring these kind of opportunities here. And that's where we could then start talking about, hey, what are we doing in medicine that's going to help all of us every day? Those of us are, weekend warriors trying to keep playing basketball into our 40s, 50s, beyond. Mm-hmm. Tennis, pickleball, we could go on forever. So these are those opportunities to let people know what we're doing, let them know how many great things are coming out of the state of Connecticut, whether it's industry leaders in biomedicine who are developing new products, whether it's the education piece where we're training the next generation to be leaders, not just. And I think Connecticut sometimes, has felt in the shadow of New York or in the shadow of Boston and the great institutions that are there, but we're starting to embrace what we do well. And yes, we don't have to have 60,000 people stadiums, but you bring an entity like the Hartford Athletic here, and you have 5,000 people coming on a regular basis, and then you have the local restaurants and beer makers, showing off their products that we're doing in the state, and you have the healthcare companies coming in and just wanting to be a little part of it, and then you bring this kind of exposition together where we're all talking about what we're doing, and other people are seeing it and they're saying, we want this too. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we're a leader in this field, so that's great.
How much conversation do the two of you have when it comes to sort of the season, the players, the training, rehab? Is it typically incident support treatment, or is there more of a preventative conversation that people don't necessarily see that happens in the off season, or as you think about the facility or staff and things?
I mean, I'll start it, but Brett will be the expert on this. But there's nothing more important at a team. Our number one thing is our players and player care. And to your point, BJ, that starts from the day we sign a player, mm-hmm. all the way through the life of that player. And there's many aspects, and the job of my staff is to work with Brett and his team to individually look at our players and understand some of their weaknesses, some of their strengths. And that's before we get into an impact injury, which happens mm-hmm. in the world of sports. And then through that, there's rehab that has to happen. So there has to be a real tight communication path. And Trinity Health and Brett have been awesome. And you can tell that by our players' experience. And one of the reasons they want to come to play for Hartford is that they understand the medical care and attention they will get. And that's a reality in sports.
It's
just
economics,
a reality.
right?
It's
Like
a reality in
extend their
sports.
career.
Extend their
that's
careers,
how-
the dollars behind it. They want to feel that there's people who really care and who are really well trained and experts in their field. And we're very fortunate to have Brett and his team working on that. So I'll turn that over to Brett.
So from there, I'll say that I'm a small part of a medical team that Bruce and through Trinity Health has been put together to give these athletes the care they deserve. And when we start with that, I mean, Bruce is overseeing an organization here. So, yes, once in a while he'll give me a call and say, hey, I'm worried about, so-and-so. I saw he took a pretty hard fall, and what do you think? So we'll have some communication like that. But it's really what he has set up, and it goes back to what we were talking about before. Having this team, this organization, then it has leagues under it and youth development organizations, so big. And those are all opportunities. And he brings players from countries that don't have anything near what we're fortunate to have here in Hartford, in Connecticut, in this country. So we see athletes come over with things that weren't diagnosed or that could potentially be problematic, or just getting the right assessment, the right workup and treatment that really helps them out. So to see them and to see that experience, these athletes really appreciate what has been set up here and what Connecticut has to offer and what Bruce has to offer, through this team. So I think those interactions are pertinent, and even before we get to those concerns of a season-ending injury type thing.
Sure. When we were talking, obviously you mentioned you had some time with St. Louis Cardinals and the Rams, and now Hartford Athletic. Are there conversations in and around, I brought up the turf, kind of making a joke, right? I bet that kept you busy, for the Rams. But you sort of said football is certainly a feeder, as our other sports have their challenges as well, labrums in hockey, and is there enough research into the playing field, the infrastructure, from the medical community standpoint, or does more need to be kind of ironed out?
It's great that you picked up on things like that. And yes, there's always more research that needs to be done. I'm going to take it back to an anecdote I just want to tell about Bruce. When he started this, we were at a family event, and he knows I had some background in sports medicine, and he said, I'm bringing a soccer team to Connecticut, a professional soccer team. This is a whole new enterprise. He said, I'd like you to be a part of it. And all of a sudden, there was excitement. And when he does it, he does things right. So again, excited to be a part of it, excited to think about that we're doing all the right things for these athletes. And yeah, that comes down to equipment, that comes down to the trainer, the athletic trainer we have is terrific and really cares about these athletes. So yeah, there are certain shoes and turfs that can have a higher rate of injury, and that's all researching that happens throughout the country of what's the right materials to have, and it's constantly in evolution. But these opportunities where we get to learn, and as long as we document and we use new technology to track. I mean, now I also work with the Hartford Wolfpack and the New York Rangers organization. We track every injury, and the whole league is doing that. And then, all right, when's the right time to return them on average? If we return them too soon, do they have re-injury? Okay. And then we talk, and then we meet, and we have things like this. So
yeah, I always wonder, even as someone who gets to watch this process pretty closely, the incredible work that the doctors do with the trainers and the players and the coach. It's a whole community to make these difficult decisions on when do you return to play. That's always one of the biggest decisions. The players all want to get back.
Yeah,
they want to push. They also do their work. They're pros. They do their work. And how do you time that? And I think to Brett's point, a lot of that is based on the hard work that they're doing at looking at other players, other injuries, understanding the individual player, understanding the mentality of the individual players, right? Can you really trust that individual's thought,
right,
or
yeah.
is it different from what I'm seeing? And, from our standpoint, we stand back, right? We don't want to be even near that conversation, right? And it's inappropriate. We're not experts on it. We're all like wishing for the player to come back.
Maybe not all owners take that approach.
Well, you take a massive risk if you don't. And I had to learn that as a new owner a little bit. What are the boundaries there, right? We're learning a business, and then you start thinking about it, and wait a minute, okay, you let the experts make the call. But we kind of sit outside that a little bit. I don't know, Doc. I'm always curious about how those conversations go with players. Does it at times, are you at times not quite on the same point, and you have to kind of move around a little bit? How does that work?
you're putting me on the spot here.
Yeah.
So the truth is, athletes want to play. That's what they do. They want to get back as soon as they can. They work hard to do so. There are rare exceptions. And our goal is to help them get better and get them back when it's safe. And it's better when it's data-driven. It's better when we have research. It's better when we have experience taking care of this level of athlete. And it's great when we have supportive organizations, Trinity Health, whether it's, but also the Hartford Athletic saying, you do what's best for this athlete. And that's our role. The relationship for me as an orthopedic surgeon or sports medicine team doctor is take care of the athlete. And they need to know that that's my priority. And I'll communicate with the organization what I really expect might happen here, what are the risks, but I'm taking care of the athlete. And they need to feel that. If they feel that, and again, a lot of these kids are, I'm calling them kids because they're kids compared to me, is they're coming from across the world and they don't know who they're talking to and they don't know what our background is, and they need to feel that trust, and that's what it's all about.
Bruce, for your purpose, when you start looking at investing in the team, and we're sort of touching in and around the element of more technology, more analytics, has that shifted, your mindset or how you approach or plan for now that there are all these data sources, there are all these, different places to infuse technology into the game? Is that something that you have had to adapt to?
Yeah, I would say there's been incremental development there, and it's been pretty fast in the last couple of years, and similar probably, BJ, to your world and the marketing world, and probably similar to Brett's too, in the sense of there's all this data out there, and it's not just taking the data and having the data, but it's how do you use the data, right?
And trusting the source.
And trusting the source, and how much confidence do you have in the data, and do you make decisions on the data? And is it, when you're looking at, let's say, bringing in a player, there's incredible data down to the individual moves on a field for every second of that player across the world.
Yeah, that's
every
crazy.
second, okay? You can know everything. Well, what do you do with that data, right? So the evolution is not just like, okay, are there data sources out there, but it's the utilization of it. And I think that takes time. So you identify some great technologies. You have to get great people who can actually work with them, and then you have to try it out.
Well, it feels like you have to kind of decide whether you are going to go that direction or it's like you're either an advanced stats buyer or you're the eye test, right? And like because it feels like it would be difficult to merge those different perspectives from coaching staff or training staff if they don't buy into the sort of the same belief system.
Yeah, no, and I think there is some conflict there, and I think some of that's generational, right?
Yeah.
And some of it is that it's pretty new. And is it tested, right? How many years would it take to really test a fully analytical view? Let's say we were going to do no eye test. Purely data-driven player selection. You could do it, but who's done it? How long have they done it? What is the success rate, right? I think we're still kind of fresh, but the good news is the data's there. The good news is there's all kinds of schools, even in Connecticut. St. Joseph's has a program now. Connecticut has a program on sports management and utilization of this data. So it's a little bit early, but boy, the data would blows your mind how detailed it is.
And that's where you have the combine and football, all of these essential controlled sort of tests and comparisons to other players. And then ultimately, there's still this element of instinct and on the field IQ and the intangibles,
and character.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And how do you? It's like any hiring that Brett and I do for all of our businesses. A lot of it comes down to character and intelligence, and the character being drive and accountability, and what data. What's the data for that? Okay, maybe you can give a psychological test. How's that done? It hasn't. Everybody be doing it if it was really.
What's the joke about
perfectly.
the Wonderlic, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, I don't even know where I stand on that, which box I'm in or whatever. But what I am seeing is a lot the effort to combine the two. I have not seen anyone really accept the idea that it's a purely data-driven. The data leads you, it definitely narrows your selection kind of universe, but then it gets down to a bit of a conversation, eye test, right? So it's that combination,
sure.
but still changing and measuring, to Brett's point, that continuous measurement of how you're doing against your theories, your concepts, and it takes time.
So it feels like player evaluation, that makes sense. We talk about data is endless, right? So then, Dr. Brett, is data playing a role? I'm sure that it is, but to what extent of the new philosophies on training, right? Or, assessing certain types of risk injuries based off of player genetics and composition, is that even kind of taking off like more of a prevalence in the locker room day to day?
I think it's where we're going, just like with most industries, that the data starts coming in voluminous amounts, and we don't know what to do with it yet. And some of it is, even data is through a lens, and who's the data for, what's the context they're measuring in. So then we have to siphon that down to a point where it's digestible, and then, like Bruce said, then we have to act on the data but test our theories and make sure it's valid, it's doing what we expect it to do. So there's no doubt it's filtering into what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, whether it's my post-surgical patients who are interacting with a telemedicine type thing and saying what they're doing, how many steps they're taking, and we're tracking that with certain interventions. And then we have to prove it. And then on the sports field, you could take that to an nth degree, right? Wearable technology. Most of us are tracking how many steps we take doing our jobs every day, or
Or even if you're not trying to, your phone is, something is.
You're being tracked.
Yeah.
So, and I think Bruce alluded to this earlier, we could put these devices, and now we could do it in a way that's not crazy expensive. It's available, it's accessible,
Right.
and put it, put these wearables on these athletes recovering from injury, but we still have to learn, okay, when should they go back based on what this is showing about their gait cycle and how many steps they're taking and whether they're favoring one side. And it's an opportunity, and we have to use it as such responsibly.
My mind was, as you ended it very apropos of responsibly, because my mind, went to, are there unintended consequences that we're seeing from those acting too quickly or through, limited data sets? I know it's outside of both of your sort of primary focus, but if you look at baseball and, the shift in innings pitched and in the number we were kind of joking, it's like pitchers wish that they get injured in high school now so they could get Tommy John out of the way, right? And then they could go back and have careers where, a decade ago, 240 innings, or some pitchers 300 innings, and that was, their arms weren't falling off, right? So it seems like there's something that changed, whether it was lifting regimens or strength versus conditioning or plyometrics versus, it feels like some data indicated a shift was necessary, and now we're seeing potentially a ripple effect of that. I don't know. Scientifically, you may know more than I do.
Sure. But. I'll take the Tommy John surgery, the ulnar collateral ligament injury. What we learned when we looked at the data was it was directly related to how hard you were throwing and how many times you were throwing, and it was that simple. So the data showed us that you need an off season, or you need a time of recovery and rest. So everyone wanted the answer to be, we inject PRP into your elbow, or we cheat the system where you take this pill and it's not going to happen to you. And the bottom line is we have to let the body rest and recover. We have to work on the entire body being in tune, things like that. So that's the way to prevent that injury. So, but the data has helped us figure that out, which is great.
So it's more of the push to constantly play and train at a young age to have a better chance at the pros. That's
and sports specialization, right? Kids aren't going out and just playing in the neighborhood, and when they feel like playing football, they'll play football, and when they feel like playing soccer, they'll play soccer, and they're doing multi-sports and resting certain body systems. Now there's to get ahead, to be the best soccer player, you have to play 7 days a week, and there are clubs, and that's great. That's raising the level of play for sure, but we have to balance that with being smart and with appropriate injury prevention and education.
I had a quick question for Dr. Brett. As a former football player, you see ACL tears all the time. I had one myself, and I've been hearing about this new procedure called the Bear procedure, and I was wondering if you're familiar with that, what that is, and is that something that's being practiced more nowadays, other than just taking like the patella tendon and putting it in and replacing it? If you could speak on that a little bit.
Sure. Good question. So he's talking about ACL repair surgery. So when an ACL tears, historically, way back at the beginning, we would say, like anything else, let's stitch it back together, see if it works. That didn't work because you couldn't get enough tension, you couldn't get enough healing in a way that made it a stable knee. So the standard of care 50 years ago became an ACL reconstruction, which means we take a new piece of tissue, usually it's a tendon, and we put it under the tension we want in the anatomic locations it should be in. So that's a reconstruction. And what you're bringing up is going back to, hey, why can't we repair this like we repair other ligaments, tendons in the body? And so maybe we can. Maybe for certain types of injuries, when they occur in certain patterns, we can. And this is what the research is. And the truth is, if we look at the studies, it's not yet as good as doing an ACL reconstruction. But then we redigest the data, and maybe if we do it in just the right circumstances and we add just the right tension and just the right maybe extra biologic material, and we could get it where we don't have to do a whole reconstruction, which is a bigger procedure, which probably takes them out of sport for longer. So that's where we try to advance science responsibly by learning.
Is that similar? We had mentioned the kind of Connecticut success story in BioBrace or BioRes. They have their version. Is that similar?
Yeah. So I guess bringing it back to technology and advances, there are always advances, and some of them, or at least seeming advances, new technologies that make sense on paper, that might work in a lab setting, and then we have to make sure they work in the real setting, and we have to do that responsibly. And so companies here in Connecticut developed a collagen scaffold that has the strength of, like, for example, our native ligaments. Also has some biologic activity, which is similar to what our body would normally produce, but maybe in this situation of injury, it's not. There aren't those healing factors around that could help make it their own and make their body whole again. So these biomedical technology companies are developing those things here in Connecticut. And again, we have to make sure it's the right time, right place, right setting, because industry does try to push it, right? There's money to be made, and that's great because that helps industry push the limits and make us better. But these are opportunities, and we like using them.
You're all your fields going off with thinking of as the entrepreneur in the room, right? Between the athletic and your original day job in data mail, right? And are you seeing opportunities here that Connecticut is sort of uniquely positioned to potentially take advantage of?
Well, I think this is what this kind of conference that we're having brings the question, at least. I think there's a tremendous amount of activity. We now have pro teams. We have some amazing college players too and teams, and we are between New York and Boston, but it's funny when I talk to people around the world about in the soccer world, they're like, you guys are in the best spot in the world. They literally say that. And I'm like, we are? Wait a minute, I grew up in West Hartford. I thought I'm like in the middle. They're like, are you kidding me? If we could put a dot down where we want to be, it's right there. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of energy on the biomedical side, on the media side, and on the pure sports side. I mean, there's guys who are creating different footwear in Connecticut. Victory, I think, is called. And
soles, yeah.
Right, soles for shoes. I mean, it's all there. And I think this kind of like opportunity to get together, we're at the beginning. I want to just walk around. I want to see what's out there. And then let me and Brett get together and dream up, because he's as big as entrepreneur as I am, for sure. Then let's get together and start dreaming a little bit about how to accelerate, test, do it responsibly. I mean, that's why we have, serious surgeons and doctors in the room.
Keeping us honest.
Yeah, keeping the business world honest and keeping our players and the young ones safe, really. So I think it's very exciting.
I appreciate
put a highlight on that
I appreciate
spotlight.
you pushing it back to the event, but that is the hope, right? Because there are great minds. There's great thinkers that are motivated and want to do something new and novel and innovative. And so much of Connecticut usually falls into insurance, helicopters, submarines, and manufacturing, and those can all be great powerhouses, but there is such a huge economy, and I don't know, fact check me, but sports-related injuries are the second largest feeder of insurance revenue dollars. Someone told me that. I'm not exactly sure if that's. It doesn't seem wrong.
Why is Brett smiling?
But what I'm saying is, it is huge business that seemingly has kind of just gone ignored. So we can get these great minds together and see that there's so much in and around the sport, and technology and equipment, in media, in player development, and nutrition and training. Like, that's the hope, right? Is that we can create some new connections that utilize the talent here.
I mean, I see it as Team Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's something about the nativism of, you know, the state you're living in, the place where your kids grow up, the place where you want to retire, or you know, the ability to go out and have fun and have a community around you. It's like a little bit Team Connecticut. And on the sports side, we actually, like all the pro teams and the Wolf Pack and the Yard Goats and Hartford Athletic and the Sun, we all get along amazingly. Like, we share practices, we'll have a few drinks together and talk about some different challenges. So there's a small community there. I think if we expand that community, I think that's the hope here.
Yep, yep.
We haven't, I don't think we've really touched the surface on what our opportunities are. So
No,
that's exciting.
I would agree. And it's the underlying point of some of the shaping sort of hope was, you'd said it earlier, and we see, as people in Connecticut, we see, we're between New York and Boston. And those that come from outside, right, see, it's like, you're right in the middle. And, like, why can't we think that? Like, why can't we
Exactly.
say it as, we are right in the middle of everything, right? We're right in between New York and Boston. We say it like, hey,
Well, you're
kind of in between.
I mean,
sorry. You know?
Rebellion is a marketing, an amazing
I'll
marketing
agree,
company.
agree.
And I think part of it is like who we are and are we ready, and part of it is marketing and really understanding what we have right now.
Yeah.
Not just what we can be. And I don't think we do a good job marketing ourselves as a sports industry. I think we can do a better job there. And we have great marketers like here at Rebellion. And I think this will come out of that conference, okay? It will come out of that. There will be energy for us to shine a light on who we are and who we can be. That is going to happen. And I'm excited for it.
Well, maybe, I hope, as long as it doesn't create more competition for you.
I mean, bring it on.
Yeah.
I mean, bring it on. It's actually, it feels like a small state, but it doesn't feel to me like a small state. You know, we have different pockets. If you're out in Danbury, it's very different than being in Hartford. If you're in New Haven or you're downstate, it feels very different. There's opportunities throughout the state to grow the sports scene bigger and bigger.
I would agree with that. You know, there's so many pockets of communities, and, you know, the best thing that grows sports is rivalry, right, and some tension. So, you know, if we can have it in our backyard, it's just as potentially better than having it next to the state.
I mean, we got Rhode Island now in our league, and it was awesome to have a rival close by. And I think that Connecticut will continue to grow. And it's not just like a rival within a sport, but it's just the pure competition of the marketplace and raising your game. I mean, if you go to a Yard Goats game, what an experience. I mean, really, what an experience over there. They've done, Tim Retzel and the team has done an incredible job. We get ideas from that. And then we have to go try to bring in some great food trucks and have the face painters and do something really fun for the fans and have a great halftime. So I think there's like a natural kind of competition there that's really positive. So I'm for more of it, not less of it.
And it seems maybe you're seeing an impact or, you know, some effects of some of the NIL shifts, the legalization of betting, and, you know, the partnerships with Foxwoods and Mohegan, FanDuel, and DraftKings. Have those started to shift the sort of fan profile or fan experience in any way?
I would say not yet from my perspective, but it's there in the sports scene in a huge way. It hasn't really, I don't think, yet trickled down. It will. It's about to. Connecticut's still kind of getting their act together on the sports betting side. New Jersey, New York have really taken off there.
You got to let people write off their losses.
Yeah, I mean, there's some structural reasons for that.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you go to Europe and also South America, I would say over 50% of the front of jerseys are sports betting. I have my own personal feelings about that, and I think it's great in moderation.
I mean, do you see some of the NFL and the Big Four that they were pushing hard against it for years, and players got called out and year-long suspensions for $1,500 bets and whatever it is, and then next year they sign their partnership deal and they're in bed with them. So it feels like they feel as though there's a tide that they can't swim against, or it's not worth from a dollar standpoint to swim against.
I think, and I can see in England now, there's a lot of pushback on it, that it went too far too fast. And, we have kids at the game, there's all kinds of things happening in that dynamic, and I think it's just as a society, we're going to have to, over time, make some choices. And I wouldn't be surprised, just like with other aspects of life, that there's some regulation over time that come in to try to just kind of manage that, whether it's help for Gamblers Anonymous type of things, or it's controlling some of the marketing on it. I think it's still a little new. The dollars were just massive for the Big Four, massive, especially overseas, crazy dollars. So it flooded in. And now I think there'll be some, regulation on that. But so far here in Connecticut, I think it's a little nascent. I think there is some room for some.
You have to find the balance between, the letting people do essentially what they've been doing with their bookie for the last 40 years, and turning the family fan experience into OTB on a Tuesday morning, right? Like, and only focused on what in-game, bets and props and whatever else, right? Like, to still maintain the essence of the sport and not make it, all
it's a deep question.
Yeah.
We're partly acknowledging what we're here about, which is sports is big business. It's a driver in our community here in Connecticut. It's a driver, nationwide and internationally, and it drives good things and bad things. But those dollars are key for our state to be involved in. So having a professional soccer team, what Bruce did to have us at the table, to have the highest level professional athletes coming here that I want to be involved with, taking care of them and learning state-of-the-art techniques so I could bring that to my population in Connecticut as a whole, is what it's about. So, yeah, with the good comes some bad, but it's really good. And the youth development programs in soccer now, a whole nother level through Hartford Athletic, and some of the things they're doing, the reverberations in our community are tremendous. So, we'll figure out how to manage some of those things, but for the most part, it's really bringing a lot of not only money, but just goodness to the community.
Are you seeing the sport adoption sort of grow with the overall interest in soccer in the U.S.?
I mean, it's
taking off.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, the growth. It's everyone, not everyone, but it feels like everyone. All the kids are playing. We started an academy last year, and we put out a kind of a social post. Hey, come for tryouts. We had in 3 days 550 kids show up at Trinity Health Stadium. And now we have over 400 kids in our academy in 1 year. And to Brett's point, what's really interesting about it is trying to take what we have at the professional level and the learnings that we have and drive that down. It's still early, but what are the best practices that Brett and Trinity Health can help us with in terms of working from what we learn from our players and driving that down to some of the youth. So I think that, it's here to stay. We have the World Cup coming in 2026. We did find the right sport, I would say. Really, the idea here was to build community, And it wasn't to, necessarily to be a pro sports owner. It was a community play. But then we needed a tenant, and we had to pick a sport. And I think we picked the right one for a lot of reasons, not just the kids who were playing, but the interest, the different diverse communities. It's incredible.
The global interest.
I mean, the if you come, hopefully, and you've been to a Hartford Athletic game, the diversity there is magical. I mean, age and different backgrounds, and it's just I don't think you see that too often in Connecticut, and that actually was my dream.
Well, that's the thing.
That was my dream.
You do, but not coming together.
Well, that's the point. No, that's exactly. It's here. You see it every day.
Yeah.
But how about coming together, and not just coming together? How about coming together to support something together? And how about coming together, have a great time together? We have not had one incident at our stadium in 6 years. Not one. Because people show up, it's clean, they feel safe, and they bring their best. And they're within a community there. I just think that part is really, really something special about sports, really something special about sports.
Bruce, I would love to hear the process behind bringing a team to Hartford. I bet.
Me too.
Yeah. And what was the opportunity that you saw bringing a soccer team to Hartford? You said you were choosing sports. Were there other sports at play? Elaborate on that process.
So really the process, and I'll try to go quickly, really the process was that there was Dillon Stadium, and I grew up in this area, and I saw that it was not functioning. And the city of Hartford was struggling at the time financially. And I was like, this is it just felt unacceptable to me. I wanted to bring it back to life. Had a great history. When I was a kid, it was the one place I would go on Thanksgiving Day where the community came together. All the old Weaver people, the Hartford public people, every different color, every different race. I mean, the whole thing. It was awesome, and that had an impression on me. So literally that was the driver. Once I started thinking about, with my partners, thinking about that stadium, how to bring it up, you got to find a tenant. And that's where I looked at the different sports. That very quickly, because of the stadium, actually, size, and I was limited. It could be lacrosse. It could have been, rugby. These are options, And there were real options. Maybe football, if I could have found the right league. I couldn't. Soccer, there was 2 leagues at the time. We did our due diligence, and we picked the USL, and that was the right pick. The other league actually has gone away, so we really made the right pick there. And then it's a process of building a stadium. That stadium, Trinity Health Stadium, is owned by the city of Hartford. It's a city of Hartford asset. So, I can't buy that stadium and build it out. I actually have to work with the city and the state to bring it up. And we worked through that process. So that's a city, the state, the private sector, BJ. We're all we really had to come together. And the key element was that when we're not using that stadium, the community would use that stadium. And that's something everyone politically and economically got on board with. Even beyond what we could bring from an economic standpoint of having our games on Wednesdays and Saturdays and the use of the stadium, the community aspect was critical to really driving that process and having the state really invest in it. And then we do the maintenance of it. So the city got a stadium. The city doesn't pay for the maintenance of it. The city gets the community to utilize it. So it from that aspect, was a home run. I don't want to go into actually the team itself and how difficult it is to run it and the finances of it and on the field. But those things, when I think about it, I think back to the original concept, and that one we actually got really right. And so right that there's really opportunity now that we're talking with the city and the state to expand that stadium, which would be really exciting to do.
What's the breakdown typically between in your league, I guess, of city or state owned versus privately owned?
It's a mix.
Is it?
It's a mix. I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say it's probably about 65 to 70% public stadiums, right? and some are quasi-public, but it's very difficult in our league to build out a private on your own stadium. I mean, our stadium.
No one ever see you return.
Right.
While you're alive.
Well, I mean, probably not. But our stadium cost $14 million to build. Okay, the stadium in Rhode Island is $130 million. Okay, so and I'll put our stadium up against any stadium, but their stadium's awesome, and I don't think it's 10 times as awesome, right? So, there is like a lot of economics, because really, BJ, it's about the payback. There is an economic element here. The state's not it's great that we're doing this for the community, but also the state wants to see the economic growth. And we've done now economic studies as we're thinking about expanding, and the dollars that have been put through the economy, whether it's doctors and surgeons, or it's the restaurants, or it's the people that we've hired, right? We have probably 50 people, including players, working for us now, or the concessions people. It just goes and goes and goes. But even beyond that is these great partners that we have, and it's retention of employees, right? And it's the element of hiring. If Brett needs to bring in an assistant, it's a small thing, but it's something to be able to say, hey, does your kid play soccer? Oh, you like soccer? By the way, there's a pro team in Hartford. Just kind of elevates the conversation a little bit. So anyway, that's all the good stuff, and I'm going to end there.
I would say maybe just, a final question on the future of the medical professional and the role in the day-to-day of sport. It seems like there's the staff that's treating, diagnosing, and then all of these leagues have the commentators and the sort of the policy makers. And are you seeing, or is it a worry that the best, such as yourself and other colleagues, get pulled out of with some of the challenges of opportunity cost for appointment time or insurance challenges, that they go more toward the on-screen assessment of what that injury likely is, as a broadcaster versus a practitioner?
Yeah, so it gets back to that question of, is it all data-driven, or is there the eye test? And in the perfect scenario, I think we marry those things together in the right way. And data is great, but it's applying it at the right time to the right person. And if we could get that right, then I think it becomes a win-win. And where medicine is going, I think, is taking this data that comes from populations, and sometimes disparate populations. Things aren't always applicable that were studied, in the Far East to a certain population that likes to do certain activities. So can we take that data, and then when, I as an orthopedic surgeon at Advanced Orthopedics New England am sitting down with my patient, and I say, okay, this is the data that applies to you, this is the reason, and yes, artificial intelligence could help us with this. But when we can marry those things, and by taking care of these athletes and the best of the best technologies that are available, and then apply it to each of you that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, that's when it's the real win-win.
So your patients will not be losing you to be the Mike Pereira of on-field injuries, or the Dan Abrams of diagnosis.
You're gonna be a commentator, Brett? You could do it.
But I think from a media standpoint, unfortunately, that's where you don't have so much of the BS of day to day, or the challenges with wrestling insurance companies for payment and all these other things. So is that, now that you can make such a living having a profile and talking about the work, that that there's a risk to lose great minds to a path of least resistance?
You're too kind, because I don't know that I have that opportunity, but I will say there's nothing better than taking all this, applying it to that individual interaction, like Bruce talked about, building community, where when I see my patients succeeding, getting back on the pickleball court, getting back to the thing they want to do that makes them happy, there's nothing better than that.
Fair. I think that's a great way to close it out.
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
Thank you,
thank
BJ.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.